Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with Top Cow and Marvel's Devil's Reign. Last week, Mephisto pulled several mortals to his new underworld and sent Sarah Pazzini and Elektra on a journey to wear their resolve, before tempting the detective into giving up her soul. But she thoroughly rejected the demon, so he just poofed her away, and what happened with the Crimson Ninja is where we continue, with Elektra/Cyblade. The cover has them among what looks like ruins, Elektra in front, and posed with complete practicality, I'm sure. Arguable kink from the artist notwithstanding, it's still a good crossover cover. Written by Howard Mackey and Brian Holgan, with art by Billy Tan, Kirk Van Wormer, Anthony Chun, David Finch, Joe Weems V, D-Tron, Billy Tan, Danny Miki, Kevin Conrad, Tyson Wengler, Liquid, and Marco Galli, who are all starring in yet another remake of Cheaper by the Dozen. We begin with a splash page of Mephisto, narrating how poets, preachers, rationalists, and philosophers have tried to understand what a soul is. Souls are currency, power, nothing more. First you get the souls, then you get the power, then you get rejected by the women. Rather than collecting souls or trading them, he amasses them like wealth or an arsenal. Turns out souls are a great substitute for C4. He reaffirms how this new reality he's moved to has no other evil entities to compete with, and not quite as many heroes to impede him. What do-gooders do exist have proven easily turned, powerless against him, or have been arranged to play into his hands. After all, I am not a fool.
Have I got news for him?
He's observing the stars of this comic while they traverse a rocky desert expanse, with Cyblade narrating how she learned of Mephisto's presence and influence from Ghost Rider, after her leader in Cyberforce, Heatwave, disappeared in a flash of light. Which, no, he didn't. He just faded away. After being trapped in a twilight world of endless dark corridors, she alleges, she was dropped in the unfamiliar wasteland along with Elektra, with whom she has much in common, like an uncertainty if either one can trust the other. Leave your lunch in the communal fridge with your name on it, then we'll see who's trustworthy. Again, more exposition to supplement for events off-panel. Riveting, huh, folks? It's on this 2-page spread where we get our title for the book, Fear and Loathing, as the two arrive at a road with abandoned cars and a sign for Las Vegas. Honestly, if this all turned out to be a drug trip from Johnny Depp playing Hunter S. Thompson, it might actually explain a lot about the story.
God didn't do that, you did it.
Uncertain if they're on either of their Earths or why they were left in the desert together, as well as unable to raise Cyberforce, the two eventually make it to the city, an additional 10-mile journey, where they're met with a couple of creeps who invite them to indulge in any sordid whim they please, after showing a secret handshake. So they inflict ambiguous bloodletting damage upon them and proceed into the city on a second, vertical 2-pager. Apparently, Sin City has become more than just a nickname, as there are enough open and extreme examples of the 7 deadlies to make Cyblade sick. Or it could be that room-temperature gas station sushi she stopped for on the way. She suspects they're under some kind of spell, bound to it the more they give in to their desires. Elektra figures Mephisto has a lieutenant on Earth pulling the strings, and eliminating them should be their first step. As they head deeper into the debauchery, and it's implied they were further sexually harassed with possibly further violence to encourage proper manners, they see people crowd around a limo, where a hype man begins a lengthy introduction. We interrupt our regularly scheduled malfeasance for a few words from our sponsor. Happens every time. They draw you in with endless carnality, then BAM! Ad for Raid Shadow Legends. Our heroines are too far away to hear or see the figure emerging from the limo's sunroof. Heatwave, encouraging continued revelry, unchecked by morals. He offers the one commandment of do what thou wilt, telling them to give in to their basest desires and darkest appetites. Woo! I'm having my bowl of corn pops with orange juice! Gonna go to bed at a reasonable time! Anything goes, baby! Promising a special treat at midnight if they're very, very wicked, he tosses them some gold coins before he leaves.
Hubba, 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 money, 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 who do you trust?
They cheer huzzah, which this doesn't feel quite like a huzzah crowd, more a drunken monosyllabic yelling before upchucking onto the pavement. However, the coins turn out to be intensely hot to the touch, which Heatwave laughs off as part of the fun. "Imbeciles! You expect to dance with the devil and not get burned?"
You ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight?
Cyblade only caught a glimpse of her former leader, though apparently not enough to recognize him, and gets the feeling that she's already lost whatever game this is. "Candyland has never been more deadly." "Well, Cyblade, it looks like that's our man." "Cyblade? Sorry, just between him passing out money and referencing a dance with the devil, what about it? Are we sure Mephisto is behind this and not Tim Burton?" You know who we haven't checked in on for a while? Jamie, aka Fist from Weapon Zero. Last time we saw him, he was accidentally teleported into LA and decided to go AWOL from the team, hitching a ride with some strange woman. However, in the issue of Weapon Zero following that, it turned out he was working with Arisha, the right hand of the alien warlord Nagolth, and they seemed to be in a romantic relationship. While brief, there was a clear implication that they had grown tired of their respective sides of the conflict and wanted to run away together. From Jamie's perspective, anyway, it's clear from Arisha's inner monologue that she was using him for her boss's plans. It's the one situation where that metal bikini that Mephisto put her in would have come to some actual use. The rest of that issue is Lilith trying to take retribution for the loss of her family out on the team before Ordnance gets her to see reason. Sorry I didn't bring it up before, it just didn't come up. The irony being that I had originally intended to do an episode where I would review the interlude comics, but I didn't feel they affected the overall story that much, so I passed. Go figure. But right now, Jamie is in a bar with his friend, complaining about a preacher on TV who calls for repentance in what is clearly the end times. Arisha suggests that he could do better to reach people if he tried, so as a lark, he stands on the table and calls the attention of the other patrons, saying that if the old world is ending, good riddance. Here's to the new world with no cops, rules, or paying for your beer, where you just take whatever you want. This seems to resonate with the barflies, encouraging them to follow Jamie, as Arisha smiles at his job well done. Look, an army of drunks isn't the win you think it is. They're too slosh to be of much functional use, and once you run out of booze, they'll be incapacitated by their own hangovers. Back with our heroines, Cyblade narrates how being raised to be a warrior helps keep her grounded, focused on the mission. She finds Elektra more mysterious, with experience beyond her youth, and there's a growing unease between them, preventing any bonding. An old man is, in his own way, preaching to people that a spirit told him not to run off into the desert, but speak his word, that others should not be fooled by empty promises and fortunes, that they have been conned. Buying a square foot of land in Scotland does not make you a Scottish lord, I'm telling you, people. He sees the two warrior women, calling them avenging angels out to deliver the people. While they are on the right path, they should beware. An ally will be their downfall. A statement that doesn't exactly help their existing unease with each other. While they could be friends, neither is willing to let her guard down, and Cyblade, having already saved her world a time or two, doesn't need anyone second-guessing her. Needing to find the Fire King, Dominique suggests the enormous castle with the demonic gargoyles and neon sign designating it a hotel and casino.
Nice decorating. Let me guess. Satan?
Inside, a guy in a tuxedo and cape is telling skeleton guards to be extra attentive and to kill any intruders so the master won't be disturbed. So, of course, Elektra and Cyblade sneak right past him while he threatens the undead underlings. Between the dialogue and seeing our heroine's silhouettes, it's a genuinely funny scene, and I like it. But it's in a story that's been more serious and dramatic than anything else, so it feels just a tad sillier. It's not a bad page, just feels a skosh out of place tonally. Also, I don't know if we're supposed to know who this henchman is, except someone's lazy attempt at tuxedo mask cosplay. As the two make their way up to the penthouse via service stairway, Cyblade feels the tension rising, like needles under her skin. I told you should have given that acupuncturist a bigger tip. When Elektra mentions she could have taken out a guard and disarmed the alarm to no detection, Cyblade mentions that bright red is not exactly the smartest color for ninja operations. Red is the color of blood, the color of passion, of pride, of ketchup, of stop signs, and the most sinister apex predator known to man, Elmo. Neither woman forgetting the old man's warning, They come to a gate above two demonic guards that look like nameless henchmen He-Man might fight, take them out easily while being mildly snarky with each other, then continue on. They climb up some thorny vines, with Elektra being a bit testy when Cyblade makes a joke involving her mother, when they reach the penthouse level, finding a trail of black rose petals on the balcony leading to a pair of doors. Turns out they got the wrong room and they're about to interrupt the Grim Reaper's romantic evening. On the other side of the doors, the caped guy from earlier, apparently called Brimstone, assures Heatwave the grounds are completely secure. He is subsequently dismissed as the Great One pours himself a drink and says he has other matters to attend to, as our heroines stand ready to attack him from behind. Probably how most gamblers would react if they had superpowers, ninja training, while also feeling they'd been cheated at the craps table. Elektra doesn't hesitate to launch at him with her sword, only to be blasted by Cyblade at the last second. She apologizes, having not known before now that the one behind all this was Heatwave, now suddenly sitting on a throne, reciting the old man's earlier warning about an ally being their downfall. He lured Dominique here in hopes that she'd be his queen, as once this Earth is conquered, Mephisto plans to return to his own reality unchallenged, leaving Heatwave to rule as regent. How would Mephisto be unchallenged? One of his many complaints was that you couldn't swing around a sack of potatoes on Marvel Earth without hitting a hero, many that would foil his plans. So of course he's going to be challenged if he goes back. I suppose he could be planning on getting a big boost of power with all his evil doings to be more formidable, but that's not exactly what the story's been telling us. Declaring himself a god, Heatwave, or Dylan as Cyblade calls him, possibly to appeal to his humanity, says Mephisto liberated him to become someone with purpose, identity, and control he never had before. He traps Elektra in a fire cage before she can attack again, and instead of trying to rescue her, the ninja tells Cyblade to just get on with killing their opponent for the sake of two worlds. Would you kill your old leader for 3 Scooby snacks? I mean, worlds? 3 worlds? Heatwave even goes all Sith Lord, mockingly encouraging her to give in to her anger and destroy him. But they both know she can't, given what he means to her. She pleads with him to remember who he is. King of the Pride Lands, son of Mufasa? She says it's not too late, but he just punches her, saying it's too late for all of them as she loses consciousness. That's one way to enforce someone's bedtime. Cyblade wakes up a short time later, chained and held by the neck over the balcony. As the witching hour approaches, Heatwave offers her a final chance to be his Dark Queen, which she promptly refuses, saying she'd rather die. Deal with the Battletoads all the time? No thank you. He suggests dying isn't an option, as he tells her to look at the debauchees down below, who are, I guess, engulfed in hellfire. It's kind of a small panel, made smaller by the image of Mephisto watching his evil orb and a close-up of Cyblade from the above panel. While Heatwave clarifies, he was speaking of something worse than death. Damnation.
Eternal damnation.
So, this chapter had kind of a sudden start where the two characters are already technically aligned. No meeting, no formalities, and little to no discussion. I guess it's not the worst method, but there's very little of these two really interacting. Sure, they talk a bit, and there's some tension since they don't know each other very well, and not all of it is outright explained in narration. Perhaps Elektra's personality made it feel more apropos, but it doesn't quite make for compelling crossover dynamics if you ask me. The only thing to make this stand out from a scenario where either one of them was instead teamed up with someone of their own universe was Cyblade interrupting Elektra's attack when she realized who the second-to-last boss fight is against. So did Heatwave pay an old man to ramble on quasi-religiously and feed that warning to them when they happened by? And that's about the only thing that makes sense for all this to be a trap. And what was the point, since it seems like Cyblade would have just shot Elektra without it anyway? Cyberforce readers will probably have more context on Dominique's relationship with Heatwave. The most obvious implication or assumption is that it was either already romantic or perhaps working up to that point, given the whole queen at my side gimmick, but I don't care enough to research it. Pacing was fine, it moved the story along, though if you exclude Ballistic Wolverine, we already saw Heatwave as the big bad, so it feels like that takes away from some of the impact of Dominique finding out, even though she wasn't aware. It was kind of weird for this new angle of Mephisto's plan, where he intends to return to his own dimension, is talked about offhandedly. And since he's keen on lying, maybe that's just what he said to mess with Heatwave, but the way this has been written, it's difficult to tell. I liked the art mostly, no real problems with it, though one could rightly argue it was a tad fan-servicey here and there. Not as much in terms of skin showing, but perhaps more questionable posing, though that was common for the 90s. Our heroine's expressions did tend to look rather blank and emotionless, but one could argue maybe they're just being stoic. We now arrive at the final chapter, Silver Surfer / Weapon Zero. The cover features the heroes kind of stacked together, like they're grouped on a narrow precipice, while images of Mephisto and possibly Jamie are seen behind them. It works, though I do think they kind of look a tad awkward like that. Written by Brian Holgan, with art by Billy Tan, Kevin Conrad, Marlo Alquiza, Nathan Cabrera, Joe Weems V, Norm Rapmond, Sean Parsons, Joe Benitez, Victor Lamas, Detron, and Dean White, who comprise the new complete cast of Hamilton. We have our credits page with the usual previously caption, but instead of a paragraph of what happened before, we get the story so far. Come on, if you don't know what's happened already, we're not going to tell you. Having read everything beforehand, I wonder if this is the editors trying to avoid admitting they don't know what's going on. Mephisto is in a barren stretch of desert with Heatwave, the captive Cyblade, Lord Nagolth, and some Tessiri warriors. It was here on Marvel Earth where, he says, he tricked the Silver Surfer into opening a gateway so he could traverse realities. But that's not what happened. I guess if you were generously ambiguous, you could say that, but it feels awful glib to the point of being misleading, and it really doesn't make sense for him to be, lying about this. So I'm wondering if maybe someone goofed and referenced an earlier version of the script. But hey, Mephisto is both expositing to the other characters and narrating to the reader, so maybe he just got confused. And it looks like Heatwave suddenly grew hair since the last chapter. I guess he wanted a new look for his master's grand plan and got some evil Rogaine. Or maybe it's just an evil toupee. Cyblade says this will be the site of his defeat, but the demon pays her little mind as he starts using his power in this very awkwardly cropped panel. Maybe it was intentional, but it kinda looks accidental. The way his jaw and part of his nose are in frame. More focus on his face or charged hand might have worked better, but that's just me. Anywho, he works his underworld mojo to create an oasis with flowing water and large structures, what he calls a new Eden.
And you'll notice it didn't take me 6 days to create it.
And you'll note that those 6 days you reference are actually about creating the heavens as well as the earth, not just Eden. You'd think someone who claims to be the devil would be more accurate about his scripture. Also, that place isn't up to code, probably has a bunch of loose nails, exposed wiring, that kind of thing.
And he looked and he saw that it was good.
Shouldn't quoting the Bible make his tongue dissolve or something? Speaking of the good book, a street preacher is trying to get people to repent for their sins, given the recent ominous signs, and gets a paint can dropped in his head by Jamie, who feels the need to elaborate on his joke about changing repent into repaint.
If you have to explain a joke, there is no joke!
He's having a little party in an apartment when he's called away from a woman whose name he doesn't know by Arisha, who, remember, is the lieutenant of the evil alien warlord. Jamie says he's just being the leader of men she wanted him to be. Well, he looks like the leading man in a low-budget direct-to-video sequel to The Crow, so he's kinda close. Something important is happening the next day, and Arisha tells him he needs to avoid distractions, and disappointing her. 1 page later, and it's tomorrow, with news reporting that after floods, quakes, fires,
Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
a glittering oasis has suddenly sprung up overnight in the desert, drawing thousands of people.
So far, only one thing is for sure. The second coming will be televised.
Tonight on the CW, Jesus Christ hosts Walking on Water with the Stars. Atheist celebrities are advised to wear life preservers. Beneath the structure, Cyblade is in some kind of dungeon, doubting people will fall for Mephisto's deception, but the demon insists otherwise, that humans crave someone to latch onto and tell them what to do. And if you think this book will go any deeper with that observation, I have an oasis in the Nevada desert to sell you. She tries getting Heatwave to remember he's a hero, but he denounces his former self, as we go to Jamie and his crew arriving at the oasis. Not the band, like a couple of them thought. It's too saccharine for his liking.
Reminds me of that magical kingdom place.
There are going to be long lines for the rides, and an ice cream bar vaguely resembling a cartoon duck is going to cost you $22.50. Arisha tells him that there's more to things than meets the eye. But after we watched those Michael Bay movies, you said that cars don't actually turn into robots. I'm so confused! I find it odd that he immediately repeats this phrase to one of the other girls, like she could not have just heard Arisha say that. It's a peculiar exchange, if you ask me, and I question who's the bigger idiot. It's probably the guy named Fist. Meanwhile, in their base beneath the southern Colorado mountains, Weapon Zero has been having trouble finding their absent teammate through all the trans-dimensional energy popping up around the globe, until Valeria spots him on news covering the mysterious new desert resort. Okay, it's not the Jimmy Kimmel sketch I joked about earlier, but you have to admit, I wasn't that far off.
Missed it by that much.
They recognize Arisha with him, and how close they appear to be, and are uncertain if he's gone full-blown traitor, but their leader, Colonel Stone, intends to find out. We jump to the Marvel Universe, where our other star of the book is poetically pontificating to himself when he spots an opening to another dimension, and a bunch of winged demons flowing into it from Earth. Either that or the Wicked Witch of the West has really stepped up her game. He can tell this is the work of Mephisto because he can detect the stench of brimstone even this far out from Earth's atmosphere.
Odors are made up of particles that can't travel through the vacuum of space.
Back in the Top Cowverse, the demon narrates how he's driven the planet to near hysteria by his unnatural events. Not that we really saw much of that, mind you. And while the marginally wicked already fell under his sway, most are cowering in fear in the hope of divine intervention, as he appears in a very Jesus-like visage, only clean-shaven because I guess he didn't want to be too on the nose. Well, yeah, I know you didn't really look like that, but I figure he's just playing off all that Renaissance art. Though the panel he's quite nicely framed in has crucifixes on it, and each of them does have the beard. So, what's Mephisto's excuse? Can't rock the face mane like some of us, oh powerful demon lord? Weapon Zero beams down in civilian garb, trying to find Jamie as the disguised devil goes on, that it is indeed the end times, and rather than fear it, mankind should see it as a new dawn for creation. With the war between darkness and light arriving for them, people must resist the enemies clothed in spite, hatred, and anger. Hey, I'm not clothed in anger, I'm just angry. There's a difference! All that people need do is commend their souls unto this robed figure bearing the cross, including baptizing themselves in the oasis he's made. The world ends not with a bang, but with a wet t-shirt contest. Sensing resistance, he gets more dramatic, drawing in his demon horde and pretending to be unable to hold them off, unless people willingly give their souls over. After spotting Weapon Zero in the crowd, Mephisto forces them to change into their fightin' togs.
What's happening? Why are we morphing into our battle forms? We didn't call out dinosaur names or show off our belt buckles. What gives?
Jamie sees them and wonders why he didn't change too, and Arisha says he belongs to her now. He's no longer one of them.
You're a VR trooper now, Jamie.
Deriding the team's misshapen appearance, Not Christ tries to hurry along, people forking over their souls, lest he run out of patience, only to be distracted by a light from above and his glamour fading. About time God took action on trademark infringement. And to add to embarrassment, he's starting to slobber.
Good boy, little drooly.
It's the Silver Surfer descending from the clouds, revealing the devil for what he is for all to see, telling people not to be taken in by his sweet lies and pleasing words, for Mephistopheles is the worst of the worst. He'll ask to borrow your car and return it with a tank of gas that's practically bone dry. He and Weapon Zero are then beset by a horde of winged demons, giving us this nifty two-pager. When Mephisto starts cracking open the earth with hellfire shooting out, Arisha remarks that this wasn't the plan, revealing to Jamie that she was in league with the red guy this whole time to conquer the planet. She promises to explain if he trusts her and gets them out of there alive, because that sounds like a great plan. But hey, she's hot, so why not believe her all over again? Ordnance says it's not enough to fight off the evil imps, rather they have to stop the cause of the chaos. So Surfer points them in the direction of Mephisto, because I guess the Colonel just missed it when fake Jesus got exposed, with Nagolth beside him. Wanting revenge for her dead sister, Lilith hitches a ride with the Surfer to confront the Warlord, and mentions that the shiny spaceman talks too much. He's never gotten any complaints before, but that's probably because he's usually talking to himself. In the fracas, the team loses track of Jamie, who hops into a car with Arisha so they can drive off, write their own futures, and leave the madness behind. Like Bonnie and Clyde, because that had such a happy ending, right? She literally worked with the devil, but she is still very attractive and Jamie is an idiot. Back at the battle, Mephisto manipulates Lilith's armor to ensnare both her and the Surfer, incapacitating them for Nagulth to take his time in murdering his Batai foe. Before he can get the chance, however, he's struck by a powerful fire blast, because Heatwave, who considered his previous self a weak nobody, changed his mind after Cyblade said he was a hero, one who'd face death to take down Mephisto, as well as the finest man she'd ever known. Well, his turn to evil happened unceremoniously off-panel. I guess we shouldn't expect much from him switching back to the side of the angels. He makes a dramatic speech about how he gave into fear and weakness, allowed his mind to be clouded, betrayed his friends, and will take this chance to recover even a scrap of his soul.
Believe me, if you think to defy me, there will indeed be the devil to pay.
And since souls are his currency, we run into a bit of a finance problem, don't we, folks? He launches himself at the demon, still imbued with godlike power, as he takes them skyward, Mephisto reminding him he can easily take those enhancements away, which Heatwave seems okay with. The Surfer, now free from Lilith's armor, speeds after them in hopes of saving the pyrokinetic. Then there's an enormous blast in the sky. Demons burn away, Cyblade's shackles disintegrate, and the oasis return to sand as Nagulth retreats. I'm assuming that without the big bad around, Nagulth finally realized he might actually have to do something and decided to skedaddle instead. Also, his soldiers were there and they didn't even join in on the fighting. What's up with that? The Silver Surfer returns, saying the battle is over to a cheering crowd, explaining that Mephisto's plot is undone, his captives will return to where they belong, and the Fiend won't be troubling their world any further. He's going to see about starting a new hell in one of the IDW continuities, but this loss is going to look terrible on his ethereal credit score. Sadly, Heatwave sacrificed himself before the Surfer could save him, and tells the crowd to remember that sacrifice before they're again tempted by offers of salvation that come off too cheap. You haggle for your immortal soul! Or don't haggle, I'm not sure which it is, and I don't think the book does either. They should also remember how blessed their world is, as it's something they're often cursed to overlook, and to keep in mind their victories as well as lost comrades, and do their memories justice. Get your collectible Heatwave NFTs! Never forget! Never fungible! With the gateway to his own reality closing, he bids his new friends farewell, and the story ends on Weapon Zero, a somber Cyblade, and a hushed crowd. That was Silver Surfer / Weapon Zero, the conclusion of Top Cow and Marvel's Devil's Reign crossover. And I pray the good Lord forgives these comics, because they definitely lost their way. Individually, these issues are not poorly told. Maybe there are some exposition dumps, maybe some scenes are too quick, maybe the pacing gets a little shaky here and there. Sometimes the art got inconsistent in between books, like with Erish's skin tone, and sometimes it was inconsistent in the same book. But I would not call them bad. Collectively, as pieces of a larger storyline, they become clunky, leave out important moments that would have had more impact if they were seen instead of referenced, some subplots and characters outright abandoned, and some players are seen so rarely you can easily forget they were involved, raising the question if they actually served a purpose in the first place. Nagulth's entire role seemed to be sending his right-hand woman to cozy up to Jamie, get him to coax people into following him, lead them to the false oasis, but he got like a handful of barflies, layabouts, and drifters that would barely fill a school auditorium, to a place where thousands, maybe millions, according to dialogue, were heading already independent of him. This was supposed to be the downfall of Weapon Zero, adding a drop to a bucket Mephisto was already filling, and no follow-up with any of the characters that were informed of the Devil's presence either? Remember how Wolverine was apparently engulfed in the fires of perdition? Or that Ghost Rider just up and left somewhere on this Earth? Or that we last saw Elektra in a flame cage? Or how about that other Top Cow hero that was turned evil? Those ring any bells to you, viewers? Because they apparently didn't for the creators. But hey, the Surfer said everyone went back to where they belonged, so I guess we assume that whatever happened to Mephisto just warped them back to their proper realities. Maybe the Top Cow souls that were damned too, who knows? You'd think that maybe Sarah Pizzini, having been courted by this demon herself, might have been interested in all the chaos the book mentions in the final installment, or that the Witchblade might want to be proactive in fighting something that wants its power. But the more I think about it, hey, I could understand her sitting this out given what she went through. But what about the members of Cyberforce? You would think that word of Heatwave becoming Las Vegas dictator would have gotten around. Heck, Ballistic on her own figured out he was being mind-controlled. Did she not tell the others? Is that supposed to speak to the chaotic nature of the team without Heatwave to lead them? Even so, I would think Ghost Rider would have told the team, since, he apparently went to them and they told him to go find their sharpshooter. All these key players in this grand scheme by this allegedly uber-powerful supernatural threat, and they're forgotten about quickly enough. The manifestation of the Marvel Universe itself, Eternity, went to the trouble of sending Ghost Rider, but when he failed to stop Mephisto, it seemed other heroes went in totally independent of any higher power guiding them. What hurts it more is that it gets bogged down in a lot of details that seem to relate mostly to the top cow characters, their relationships and personal problems, which may be a red flag for those not acquainted with or reading the issues before or during this arc. Despite all that, despite the sudden switches from good to evil or evil to good with no build-up, the forgotten story elements and subplots, the fact that we end on Silverbridges lecturing people for seemingly no compassion to the fact that they're not used to this kind of thing and were supremely duped by who was alleged to be one of the best tricksters in the Marvel Universe, I can still see some potential in this story. They could have done more to delve into false prophets, how tempting they can be, and how to combat them. Like maybe someone pointing out how ludicrous it is that Christ would not have infinite patience for his children, or that the incognito demon didn't quite speak like the Son of God, with telling people to just give him their souls because he was unable to fight off the forces of evil. Though I do think it was a nice touch that this charade played out in the desert, possibly, but I'm just guessing here, a reference to Jesus spending 40 days in such an area and being tempted by the devil. Mostly, each one-shot seems more focused on featuring the clashing and or teaming up of the title characters, with mentions or glimpses of Mephisto's plan, and quickly referencing stuff that happened but we didn't really get to see. And there's a fix for that. Cut back on splash pages and two-page spreads, and give a page or two in each chapter to these ominous signs of the end times happening around the world, and Mephisto's hand in them. Yeah, we saw some people go nutters in Ghost Rider Ballistic, but that was relegated to just one city. In this revised scenario, it would be more global, and in each installment, the chaos escalates and people's reactions get worse. Maybe show a bit more of Arisha influencing Jamie to speak to the regular people. In the main story, not the Weapon Zero ongoing that was labeled an interlude. Let's see their following grow. Maybe Jamie gets reported about under an assumed name, no photographs, until, under his evil girlfriend's orders, finally tells his misled flock to meet him in the desert, making his role more significant. Perhaps even have him come to blows with his former team, as he says he just wants to be free to live his life on his own terms. Have Cyblade joined in captivity by Wolverine and Elektra, guarded by both Heatwave and Killraiser. When the big demon fight breaks out, who shows up but Cyberforce, coaxed back into action by Ghost Rider, who of course uses his penance stare to cleanse the top cow heroes of Mephisto's influence and free their comrades. This would potentially give us more fights between our heroes and the demons and the Tessiri. And to help lead up to this, previous chapters could have had more on Heatwave, maybe showing an inner struggle, flashbacks giving us examples of why he felt so inadequate before, so that when he's purged of evil, his sacrifice has more weight to it. This is part of what makes it kind of irksome to not find out any behind-the-scenes details on the story, because there's a lot that could have been made better, but something inhibited that. It's flawed, but I don't think any shortcomings are because of lack of skill from the creators, but other factors. Maybe there were deadline issues, poor communication, last-minute mandates, a confluence of unfortunate events. I don't know. I could possibly ask any of the writers about it via Twitter, but I always feel like I'd be bothering people just thinking about doing that. So I couldn't tell you exactly why there's spotty continuity, or how Mephisto abdicating hell to his son Darkheart was only mentioned in the previously captions in white text, which can make it very difficult to read clearly, or why the greatest trickster's master plan didn't seem so well planned, given how much was left ambiguous, how much was left off the page, and surprise developments coming out of left field. But for all its faults, there was a much more solid, thought-provoking story hidden beneath the disappearing protagonists, exposition, and occasional cheesecake posing.
Hula girls! Hula girls! Hula girls!
A more subtle way to address the allure of false prophets, of those who manipulate people's biases into going down the wrong path, and encouraging more critical thinking. Because even Jesus didn't want people to follow him blindly. Sure, but I don't know that burying Mephisto under fishes and loaves would have been any more satisfying. No offense. That does it for Devil's Reign, a story that may not have been that great, but not for lack of trying. More lack of focus, if anything else. Why was that? God knows. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.